Again, Isaiah chapter 41. In this chapter, God is reminding His people for the purpose of comforting them who He is. He's promising them His miraculous protection, His miraculous provision. It's a chapter that simply reveals that the Lord is at work on the behalf of His people, and that He wants us to know that. What is presented here is God working His purpose for His people, God's providential care of His people, God reassuring His people. I'd like to read verse 20, that they may see and know and consider and understand together that the hand of the Lord hath done this, and that the Holy One of Israel hath created it. Our text begins with the word that. Very important word. Word that must not be passed over. In this case, it introduces a subordinate or dependent clause. And you'll notice about halfway through the verse, that appears again. So what we read here in verse 20 is a double subordinate or dependent clause. The first one is, they may see, know, and consider and understand together. It's a dependent clause introduced by the word that. The second, the hand of the Lord hath done this, and the Holy One of Israel hath created it. Those two clauses by themselves do not make sense. They are dependent upon something else. Something else must give them their meaning, give them their sense. In this case, directly it goes back to verses 17 through 19, where you have several independent clauses, phrases, clauses that can stand by themselves, sentences. Notice, verse 17, when the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue faileth for thirst, I, the Lord, will hear them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. That's a sentence. It's a complete thought. Does not depend upon anything else. The dependent clauses of verse 20 go back to this. Verse 18, I will open rivers in high places and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water. Technically, you see a lot of commas there, but you can put a period at the end of each one of those. They're complete sentences. They're complete thought. They need no explanation. Verse 20 is our text, or verse 19, I will plant in the wilderness the cedar, the shittim tree, and the myrtle, and the oil tree. I will set in the desert the fir tree, and the pine, and the box tree together. Again, several independent clauses. So contextually, our verse 20 receives its meaning from what has gone on before. Receives its meaning from what we read in verses 17 through 19. Technically, it goes back further than that, which we'll see. So our text verses our text verse, verse 20, provides the reason or the purpose of the blessings of God. Verses 17 through 19 declares what God will do, declares the blessings of God. Verse 20, that provides the reason God does these things, the reason that God blesses. God blesses, and He always has a reason for doing so. And there's always a spiritual reason. Let's say God provides a financial need. The main reason for doing that is not to provide a financial need. The main reason is a spiritual reason. We overlook that all the time. Oh, God is so good. He provided what I needed to pay this bill. Yes, He did. But what's the spiritual reason? What's the spiritual purpose? Everything God does has a spiritual purpose. So we want to speak the purpose of the blessings of God. First of all, consider the main idea. Verse 8, there are several, beginning with verse 8, there are several independent clauses, sentences, complete thought, that speak of the person of God, speak of the acts of God, that speak of the blessings, the purpose, and the promises of God. And our text verse, verse 20, is dependent upon these. It goes back to these things. Verse 20 is a statement of the reason for these things. In verse 8 and 9, we see the saving grace of God. It is seen in the two names by which the people are addressed: Israel and Jacob. From Genesis 32, from Genesis 32:1, these two names, Israel and Jacob, are used and refer to the old and the new man. Remember in Genesis 32, verses 27 and 28. I shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. No longer Jacob, but Israel. A transformation had taken place. A transformation of grace. Now notice here in verse 8, Israel, that which was changed from Jacob, art my servant. Israel, you are my servant. And also notice Jacob, the user, the usurper, the deceiver, the supplanter, the contender against God. Jacob have I chosen. Israel, art my servant. Jacob, whom I have chosen. Jacob, whom I have chosen. That's grace. You cannot have Israel, my servant, without Jacob have I chosen. It begins with Jacob, the user, the deceiver, have I chosen. Now notice verse 9. Thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, and called thee from the chief men thereof, and said unto thee, Thou art my servant. Who's a servant? Israel. I have chosen thee. Who did he choose? Jacob, the user, deceiver, and not cast thee away. You were Jacob, a user and a deceiver, a schemer. And I chose you. You deserved to be cast away, but I didn't cast you away. That's mercy. But I chose you. That's grace. In verse 9, we see the faithfulness of God. So in verse 8, we have the saving grace of God. Verse 9, I have chosen thee and not cast thee away. That's the faithfulness of God. In verse 17, there's the promise of the same in the future. He says, I will not forsake them. So we have the faithfulness of God. We have the saving grace of God. We have the faithfulness of God. Verse 10, we already preached on this. There's the presence of God. I am with thee. There is the suitableness and relevancy of God. I am thy God. I am thy God. Also in verse 10, there is the promise of infused strength. I will strengthen thee. I will fortify you. I will bolster you. I will reinforce. I will build you up. I will strengthen thee. There's a promise of His help. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee. I will maintain thee. I will sustain thee. I will preserve you. I will protect you. I will defend you. I will keep you. Verses 11 and 12, we see this. All of this is the blessings of God, leading up to verse 20. Verses 11 and 12, not only what He'll do for us, but He says He will infuse weakness into their enemies. Notice verse 11. Behold, all they that were incensed against thee shall be ashamed and confounded. They shall be as nothing, and they that strive with thee shall perish. Thou shalt seek them, and shalt not find them, even them that contended with thee. They that war against thee shall be as nothing, as a thing of naught. I will strengthen you, and I will weaken them. It's the blessings of God. Verses 13 and 14. There's the promised assurance of God, and a reminder who God is. For I, the Lord thy God, will hold thy right hand, saying unto thee, fear not, I will help thee. Fear not, thou worm Jacob. There it is, Jacob again, the worm. And ye men of Israel, I will help thee, saith the Lord, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. So you have the assurance of God. I'll hold your hand. I'll be with you. There's a reminder of who God is. I'm your Redeemer. I'm the one who saved you. I am the Holy One of Israel. Verses 15 and 16. There's the promise or the blessing of vigor. Behold, I will make thee a new sharp threshing instrument having teeth. Thou shalt thresh the mountains and beat them small, and shall make the hills a shaft. Thou shalt fan them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the whirlwind shall scatter them. And thou shalt rejoice in the Lord, and shalt glory in the Holy One of Israel. It's a promise. It's the blessing of health, spiritual strength, spiritual energy, spiritual life, vitality, zeal, and passion. He says, I'll give you all these things. And then in verse 17 through 19, we've already read them, there's the promise of miraculous spiritual refreshment. But as you look at all of these verses, the main idea is God. It's what God will do. It's about who God is And as you read from verse 8 through verse 19, speaking of God, you have the pronoun I 18 times. 18 times. God says, I. 3 times, He says, my. The phrase I am occurs twice. The phrase I have occurs 3 times. And the words I will occur 13 times in those verses. And we see the words I, the Lord, 1 time, and I, the God of Israel, another time. The point is, the main idea is God. That's the main idea. God. The main idea is God in relation to His people. And oh, how we need to grasp that main idea. God. God in relation to His people. No matter what else may be going on, no matter what the future threat, lay hold of the main idea. God. And hear God say, I am. Hear Him say, I have. Hear Him say, I will. Hear Him say, I, the Lord, I, the God of Israel. He's the main idea. You and I are never the main idea. We're never to think of ourselves as the main thing. Circumstances are never the main idea. Oh, we make them the main idea, but they're never the main idea. God is the main idea. Supposition is never to be the main idea. Well, I suppose this is going to happen, and then this, and then this. Well, that may be, it may not be. But that's not the main idea. The main idea is God. The focus of these verses is, I am, I have, I will, I the Lord, I the God of Israel. That's the main idea. Keep the main thing, is the old saying. Oh, how that would help us spiritually. Keep the main thing, the main thing. And the main thing is always God. It should not be difficult to identify the main thing. The main thing never changes. The main thing is God. Don't make the main thing anything else. That'll help you spiritually for the rest of your life. We're very good at taking the insignificant and making it the main thing. We're experts at it. And we've had years of practice. It's all through our lineage. The very simple truth. God is the main idea. Well, what if I get deadly sick? God's the main idea. Or what if this happens to my child or that happens to my child? God's the main idea. It doesn't change. Keep the main thing the main thing. That doesn't mean that other things don't matter. What it means is God matters the most. Keep the main thing the main thing. So in these verses, leading up to verse 20, there is God. And He's working on behalf of His people. And there are the blessings of God. And even in the blessings of God, the blessings aren't the main thing. God is. See, if you make the blessings the main thing, you're more thankful for the blessings than you are who God is. Oh, we're guilty of that many times too. Where the blessings become the praise and not the God who gave the blessings. We're a messed up people. We really are. Keep the main thing the main thing. So what is the purpose of what we read in verses 8 through 19? We need to look at all of these things that are mentioned in verses 8 through 19 in light of our text verse. Our text verse makes no sense by itself. They're dependent clauses. But they make sense. They have deep meaning when you connect them, when you bring them back to the independent thoughts. So we see that God has saved and transformed us by His grace. Verse 20, that. There's a reason He did that. God has been faithful to us. And God promises to continue to be faithful. That. We have the promise of God's presence. That. We have the promise of His suitability to us. That. We have the promise of His strength. That. We have the promise of His help. That. We have the promise that He will uphold us. That. We have His assurance. That. We have the promise of vigor. That. We have the promise of His miraculous provision and refreshment. That. We have the reminder of who He is. That. What follows the opening that of verse 20 are the reasons, are the purposes of all these things. Why God does what He does for us. Notice what it says. That they may see. I do all of these things that they may see the hand of the Lord. That they may see. All God does for us. And we miss the purpose. And we fail to see. That they may see. See what? The hand of the Lord. Not the blessing, but the hand of the Lord. The one who gave the blessing. What does it mean to see? Well, to see means to notice. That they may notice the hand of the Lord. Oh, we may notice the blessing. Many times we don't. We've got to notice more than that. We need to notice where the blessing comes from. That they may see the hand of the Lord. To see is to discern. This isn't luck. This isn't good fortune. This is the hand of the Lord that you discern between. means to be aware. To see is to be aware. The hand of the Lord. God blesses us. God blesses us abundantly. That we might be aware of the hand of the Lord. That we might sense, that we might identify the hand of the Lord. So God works in our life, brings about things in our lives that we may see the hand of the Lord. Oh, what a blessed life to see the hand of God. Notice also that they may notice, that they may know. That they may know. I do these things that they may know. That they may know. Notice in Exodus chapter 10. We see this all through the Scriptures, and just give a few examples. Exodus 10, verse 2. He has hardened the heart of Pharaoh, that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son. He said, I do this so that you can tell your children, and of thy son's son, thy grandchildren, what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know. I've done these things that you may know how that I am the Lord. What's the main thing? I am the Lord. I do all of these things that you may know that I am the Lord. Exodus 11, verse 7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord, what's the main idea here? The Lord hath put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. He says, I bless you that you might know who I am. Exodus 31, verse 13. Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord. What's the main idea? Well, the main idea is the Sabbath. No, that's not the main idea. The main idea is, I'm the Lord. And I give you these things that you might know that I'm the Lord. Notice in Joshua chapter 4, verses 23 and 24. Joshua 4, verse 23 and 24. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan. Oh, what a blessing. From before you until you were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us until we were gone over, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord. The main idea is not the Jordan. The main idea is not the Red Sea. The main idea is the Lord, that you might know the hand of the Lord. One more in Matthew 9, verse 6. Matthew 9, verse 6. Lord has worked a miracle of healing the man with the palsy. But that you may know. He said, I've done these things that you may know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins. I didn't just do this to heal the man. I did this that you might know the hand of the Lord God works in our life that we might know. God sends blessings into our lives that we might know. To know is to be informed. Informed on who God is. Who God is. God blesses you. Provides money to pay a bill that you did not have. If that's the main thing, God gave me X amount of dollars to pay this bill. That's not going to help you a whole lot 5 years from now. But He did that you would know Him. That you would be informed about Him. Now that'll help you. The main idea is God. God works in our life, brings things about in our lives that we may know the hand of the Lord. That we might have spiritual insight into who God is. And that'll help you. God bless us that we might know. That we would have spiritual insight into who God is far more useful. Far more helpful, far more beneficial, far more productive than intellectualism, position, and status and things. God might bless you with intellect. God might bless you with position and status and things. But what will be most beneficial is the reason He does so, that you might know who He is. Notice also that they may consider, that they may see and know and consider that the hand of the Lord hath done this. To consider is to think about. It's God saying, I am going to bless you with such and such. The reason I'm doing this is that you might think about the hand of the Lord. That you might reflect upon the hand of the Lord. That you might ponder the hand of the Lord. That you might regard and be mindful of the hand of the Lord. This is the purpose. God works in our life. God brings about things in our lives that we may consider the hand of the Lord. God works and God intervenes in our lives, doing marvelous things so that we would consider, so that we would think God. I didn't say thank. We're to do that. But that we would think God. No better pattern of thought than God. Think God. I do these things that you may consider, that you might think about the hand of the Lord. To think God is a right mind. Therefore, I conclude that almost everybody is out of their mind. They don't think God. They don't have a right mind. They're all nuts. They're all crazy. People get offended, but it's the truth. A right mind is God-centered. That's a right mind. Most of God's people have lost their mind. do not have a right mind. Because God is not the main thought of their mind. Remember the demonic that Jesus healed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. You see, Satan seeks to build strongholds and fortresses of resistance against God in our minds. I believe the mind is probably the main battlefield in the warfare against Satan. Satan desires to fill the mind in order to dull the conscience, in order to draw away our affections. God blesses us that we would consider the hand of the Lord hath done this. God sends a blessing in your life. If you're in your right mind, you think, the Lord's done this. This is of the Lord. That's a right mind. Thank God. Thank God. Every other state of mind is wrong. Our spirituality has much to do with our thought patterns. And our thought patterns have much to do with our spirituality. It's pretty hard to separate the two. And God blesses us that they may consider the hand of the Lord hath done this. Notice also that they may understand. That they may understand. To understand is to comprehend. That they may understand the hand of the Lord hath done this. That they might comprehend that. That they might lay hold of that, to grasp it. That they might take that in. That they might appreciate it. Again, if we're not careful, we appreciate the blessings more than we appreciate the blesser. We appreciate the blessings more than we appreciate God. We get so focused on the blessing that we forget where it came from. And God says, I do all these things that they may understand the hand of the Lord. It's to believe. I do all these things, I bless them in all these ways, that they would believe in the hand of the Lord. So looking back on verse 20. See, know, consider, understand. This is why God blesses. That's the purpose. Now notice, with those words in mind, see, know, consider, understand. Notice Isaiah 43, verse 10. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant, whom I have chosen, that ye may know. I have chosen you that you may know and believe me and understand that I am. And grasp, I am. I am. I am who I am. Oh, God's people need to grasp that. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. Even I am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior. I've blessed you so you know who I am. So God works in our life brings blessings into our lives. The main reason, that we may progress spiritually. That they may see and know and consider and understand. And then notice that word there in verse 20. Together. So he's not just speaking of an individual. That they may see and know and consider and understand together. We together are to see and know and consider and understand the hand of the Lord hath done this. Oh, may we not get so focused upon the blessings that we forget the main thing. We sing the song, Count Your Many Blessings, and we're to do that. Thanksgiving rolls around. And preachers remind congregations of the blessings of God. Nothing wrong with that. But I believe it needs to be emphasized, and I don't believe it has been, who it is that sends the blessings. Because that's the main thing. The blessings aren't the main thing. The one who blesses is the main thing. So we have the saving grace of God. We have the faithfulness of God. The presence of God. The suitableness of God to us. The promises of God. The miraculous works of God in our lives. The purpose that we may see and know and consider and understand the hand of the Lord hath done this. Oh, that we would be a people together who would see, know, consider, and understand who God is. Who God is. That people will be enabled to do the work of God. They will be enabled to endure and persevere. Again, keep the main thing the main thing. You do not have to identify the main thing. The main thing has already been identified, and it never changes. It's God. Keep the main thing the main thing. It'll help you for the rest of your life. It'll be of spiritual benefit to you. And realize that the devil is very good at sidetracking us from the main thing. He's an expert at it. Sadly, he has many tools in God's people to accomplish that purpose as well. God's own people will strive to get our minds off the main thing and misidentify the main thing. They're tools. Oh, we don't want to be a tool in Satan's tool chest. I believe this is how the devil works. I've used this tool before. Speaking of an individual. Worked pretty well. This tool, and he just goes right to it again. Oh, I can use him again. It's been a faithful tool. Oh, that we would not be that tool in Satan's hand. And may we always recognize it's God. I'm blessed. You're blessed. And it's God who's done it. And He's bigger than the blessing. And He's to get more praise than the blessing. I'm afraid many times it's the blessings that are getting the praise and not the God who gives the blessings. God help us. Brother Dave, if you'd come and lead us in a verse song. Let's all stand, Dave.